Prapathakas 7 of the Chandogya Upanishad, translated by Max Müller. This LibriVox recording is on the public domain. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat. 7th Prapathaka, 1st Kanda. Narada approached Sanat Kumara and said, "Teach me, sir." Sanat Kumara said to him, "Please to tell me what you know. Afterward, I shall tell you what is beyond." Narada said, "I know the Rig Veda, sir, the Yajurveda, the Sama-veda, as the fourth, the Atharvana, as the fifth, the Itihasa Purana, the Bharata, the Veda of the Vedas, grammar, the Pitra, the rules for the sacrifices for the ancestors, the Rasi, the science of numbers, the Daiva, the science of portents, the Nidhi, the science of time, the Vakovakya, logic, the Ekayana, ethics, the Deva Vidya, etymology, the Brahma Vidya, pronunciation, Siksha, ceremonial, Kalpa, prosody, Khandas, the Bhuta Vidya, the science of demons, the Kshatra Vidya, the science of weapons, the Nakshatra Vidya, astronomy, the Sarpa, the Devajnana Vidya, the science of serpents or poisons, and the sciences of the genii, such as making of perfumes, dancing, singing, playing, and other fine arts. All this I know, sir." "But, sir, with all this, I know the mantras only, the sacred books. I do not know the Self. I have heard from men like you that he who knows the Self overcomes grief. I am in grief. Do, sir, help me over this grief of mine." Sanat Kumara said to him, "Whatever you have read is only a name. A name is the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Sama-veda, and as the fourth the Atharvana, as the fifth the Itihasa Purana, the Veda of Vedas, the Pitriya, the Rasi, the Daiva, the Nidhi, the Vakovakya, the Ekayana, the Deva Vidya, the Brahma Vidya, the Bhuta Vidya, the Kshatra Vidya, the Nakshatra Vidya, the Sarpa, and Devajnana Vidya. All these are a name only. Meditate on the name. He who meditates on the name as Brahman is, as it were, Lord and Master, as far as the name reaches. He who meditates on the name as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than a name? Yes, there is something better than a name. Sir, tell it me. 2nd Kanda. Speech is better than a name. Speech makes us understand the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Sama-veda, and as the fourth the Atharvana, as the fifth the Itihasa Purana, the Veda of Vedas, the Pitra, the Rasi, the Daiva, the Nidhi, the Vakovakya, the Ekayana, the Deva Vidya, the Brahma Vidya, the Kshatra Vidya, the Nakshatra Vidya, the Sarpa, and the Devajnana Vidya, heaven, earth, air, ether, water, fire, gods, men, cattle, birds, herbs, trees, all beasts down to worms, midget, and ants. What is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false, what is good and what is bad, what is pleasing and what is not pleasing. For if there were no speech, neither right nor wrong would be known, neither the true nor the false, neither the good nor the bad, neither the pleasant nor the unpleasant. Speech makes us understand all this. Meditate on speech. He who meditates on speech as Brahman is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as speech reaches. He who meditates on speech as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than speech? Yes, there is something better than speech. Sir, tell it me. Third Kanda. Mind, Manas, is better than speech. For as the closed fist holds two Amalaka or two Kola or two Aksha fruits, thus does mind hold speech and name. For if a man is minded in his mind to read the sacred hymns, he reads them. If he is minded in his mind to perform any actions, he performs them. If he is minded to wish for sons and cattle, he wishes for them. If he is minded to wish for this world and the other, he wishes for them. For mind is indeed the self, mind is the world, mind is Brahman. Meditate on the mind. He who meditates on the mind as Brahman is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as the mind reaches. He who meditates on the mind as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than mind? Yes, there is something better than mind. Sir, tell it me. Fourth Kanda. Will, Sankalpa, is better than mind. For when a man wills, then he thinks in his mind, then he sends forth speech, and he sends it forth in a name. In a name the sacred hymns are contained. In the sacred hymns all sacrifices. All these, therefore, beginning with mind and ending in sacrifice, center in will, consist of will, abide in will. Heaven and earth willed, air and ether willed, water and fire willed. Through the will of heaven and earth, etc., rain wills. Through the will of rain, food wills. Through the will of food, the vital airs will. Through the will of the vital airs, the sacred hymns will. Through the will of the sacred hymns, the sacrifices will. Through the will of the sacrifices, the world as their reward wills. Through the will of the world, everything wills. This is will. Meditate on will. He who meditates on will as Brahman, he, being himself safe, firm, and undistressed, obtains the safe, firm, and undistressed worlds which he has willed. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as will reaches. He who meditates on will as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than will? Yes, there is something better than will. Sir, tell it me. Fifth Kanda. Consideration, Chitta, is better than will. For when a man considers, then he wills. Then he thinks in his mind, then he sends forth speech, and he sends it forth in a name. In a name the sacred hymns are contained. In the sacred hymns all sacrifices. All these, beginning with mind and ending in sacrifice, center in consideration, consist of consideration, abide in consideration. Therefore, if a man is inconsiderate, even if he possesses much learning, people say of him, is nothing, whatever he may know, for if he were learned, he would not be so inconsiderate. But if a man is considerate, even though he knows but little, to him indeed do people listen gladly. Consideration is the center. Consideration is the self. Consideration is the support of all these. Meditate on consideration. He who meditates on consideration as Brahman, he, being himself safe, firm, and undistressed, obtains the safe, firm, and undistressed worlds which he has considered. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as consideration reaches. He who meditates on consideration as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than consideration? Yes, there is something better than consideration. Sir, tell it me. Sixth Kanda. Reflection, dhyana, is better than consideration. The earth reflects, as it were, and thus does the sky, the heaven, the water, the mountains, gods, and men. Therefore, those who among men obtain greatness here on earth seem to have obtained a part of the object of reflection, because they show a certain repose of manner. Thus, while small and vulgar people are always quarrelling, abusive, and slandering, great men seem to have obtained a part of the reward of reflection. Meditate on reflection. He who meditates on reflection as Brahman is Lord and Master, as it were, as far as reflection reaches. He who meditates on reflection as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than reflection? Yes, there is something better than reflection. Sir, tell it me. Seventh Kanda. Understanding, Vijnana, is better than reflection. Through understanding, we understand the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, the Sama-veda, and as the fourth, the Atharvana, as the fifth, the Itihasa Purana, the Veda of Vedas, the Pitra, the Rasi, the Daiva, the Nidhi, the Vakovakya, the Ekayana, the Deva Vidya, the Brahma Vidya, the Bhuta Vidya, the Kshatriya Vidya, the Nakshatra Vidya, the Sarpa, the Devajnana Vidya, heaven, earth, air, ether, water, fire, gods, men, cattle, birds, herbs, trees, all beasts down to worms, midges, and ants, what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false, what is good and what is bad, what is pleasing and what is not pleasing, food and savor, this world and that, all this we understand through understanding. Meditate on understanding. He who meditates on understanding as Brahman reaches the worlds where there is understanding and knowledge. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as understanding reaches. He who meditates on understanding as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than understanding? Yes, there is something better than understanding. Sir, tell it me. Eighth Kanda. Power, Bhala, is better than understanding. One powerful man shakes 100 men of understanding. If a man is powerful, he becomes a rising man. If he rises, he becomes a man who visits wise people. If he visits, he becomes a follower of wise people. If he follows them, he becomes a seeing, a hearing, a perceiving, a knowing, a doing, an understanding man. By power the earth stands firm, and the sky, and the heaven, and the mountains, gods and men, cattle, birds, herbs, trees, all beasts down to worms, midges, and ants. By power the world stands firm. Meditate on power. He who meditates on power as Brahman is, as it were, Lord and Master, as far as power reaches. He who meditates on power as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than power? Yes, there is something better than power. Sir, tell it me. Ninth Kanda. Food, Anna, is better than power. Therefore, if a man abstain from food for 10 days, though he live, he would be unable to see, hear, perceive, think, act, and understand. But when he obtains food, he is able to see, hear, perceive, think, act, and understand. Meditate on food. He who meditates on food as Brahman obtains the worlds rich in food and drink. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as food reaches. He who meditates on food as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than food? Yes, there is something better than food. Sir, tell it me. 10th Kanda. Water up is better than food. Therefore, if there is not sufficient rain, the vital spirits fail from fear that there will be less food. But if there is sufficient rain, the vital spirits rejoice because there will be much food. This water, on assuming different forms, becomes this earth, this sky, this heaven, the mountains, gods and men, cattle, birds, herbs and trees, all beasts down to worms, midges, and ants. Water indeed assumes all these forms. Meditate on water. He who meditates on water as Brahman obtains all wishes. He becomes satisfied. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as water reaches. He who meditates on water as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than water? Yes, there is something better than water. Sir, tell it me. 11th Kanda. Fire, Tejas, is better than water. For fire, united with air, warms the ether. Then people say, "It is hot, it burns, it will rain." Thus does fire, after showing the sign itself first, create water. And thus again thunderclaps come with lightnings, flashing upwards and across the sky. Then people say, "There is lightning and thunder, it will rain." Then also does fire, after showing this sign first, create water. Meditate on fire. He who meditates on fire as Brahman obtains resplendent himself, resplendent worlds, full of light and free of darkness. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as fire reaches. He who meditates on fire as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than fire? Yes, there is something better than fire. Sir, tell it me. 12th Kanda. Ether, or space, is better than fire. For in ether exist both sun and moon, the lightning, stars, and fire, Agni. Through the ether we call, through the ether we hear, through the ether we answer. In the ether or space we rejoice when we are together, and rejoice not when we are separated. In the ether everything is born, and towards the ether everything tends when it is born. Meditate on ether. He who meditates on ether as Brahman obtains the worlds of ether and of light, which are free from pleasure and pain, wide and spacious. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as ether reaches. He who meditates on ether as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than ether? Yes, there is something better than ether. Sir, tell it me. 13th Kanda. Memory, Smara, is better than ether. Therefore, where many are assembled together, if they have no memory, they would hear no one, they would not perceive, they would not understand. Through memory we know our sons, through memory our cattle. Meditate on memory. He who meditates on memory as Brahman is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as memory reaches. He who meditates on memory as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than memory? Yes, there is something better than memory. Sir, tell it me. 14th Kanda. Hope, Asha, is better than memory. Fired by hope, does memory read the sacred hymns, perform sacrifices, desire sons and cattle, desire this world and the other. Meditate on hope. He who meditates on hope as Brahman, all his desires are fulfilled by hope. His prayers are not in vain. He is, as it were, Lord and Master as far as hope reaches. He who meditates on hope as Brahman. Sir, is there something better than hope? Yes, there is something better than hope. Sir, tell it me. 15th Kanda. Spirit, Prana, is better than hope. As the spokes of a wheel hold to the nave, so does all this, beginning with names and ending in hope, hold to spirit. That spirit moves by the spirit. It gives spirit to the spirit. Father means spirit. Mother is spirit. Brother is spirit. Sister is spirit. Tutor is spirit. Brahmana is spirit. For if one says anything unbecoming to a father, mother, brother, sister, tutor, or Brahmana, then people say, "Shame on thee! Thou hast offended thy father, mother, brother, sister, tutor, or a Brahmana." But if after the spirit has departed from them, one shoves them together with a poker and burns them to pieces, no one would say, "Thou offendest thy father, mother, brother, sister, tutor, or a Brahmana." Spirit, then, is all this. He who sees this, perceives this, and understands this, becomes an Ativadin. If people say to such a man, "Thou art an Ativadin," he may say, "I am an Ativadin." He need not deny it. 16th Kanda. But in reality He is an Ativadin who declares the highest being to be the true, Satya. Sir, may I become an Ativadin by the true? But we must desire to know the true. Sir, I desire to know the true. 17th Khanda. When one understands the true, then one declares the true. One who does not understand it does not declare the true. Only he who understands it declares the true. This understanding, however, we must desire to understand. Sir, I desire to understand it. 18th Khanda. When one perceives, then one understands. One who does not perceive does not understand. Only he who perceives understands. This perception, however, we must desire to understand. Sir, I desire to understand it. 19th Khanda. When one believes, then one perceives. One who does not believe does not perceive. Only he who believes perceives. This belief, however, we must desire to understand. Sir, I desire to understand it. 20th Khanda. When one attends on a tutor, spiritual guide, then one believes. One who does not attend on a tutor does not believe. Only he who attends believes. This attention on a tutor, however, we must desire to understand. Sir, I desire to understand it. 21st Khanda. When one performs all sacred duties, then one attends really on a tutor. One who does not perform his duties does not really attend on a tutor. Only he who performs his duties attends on his tutor. This performance of duties, however, we must desire to understand. Sir, I desire to understand it. 22nd Khanda. When one obtains bliss in oneself, then one performs duties. One who does not obtain bliss does not perform duties. Only he who obtains bliss performs duties. This bliss, however, we must desire to understand. Sir, I desire to understand it. 23rd Khanda. The infinite, Bhuman, is bliss. There is no bliss in anything finite. Infinity only is bliss. This infinity, however, we must desire to understand. Sir, I desire to understand it. 24th Khanda. Where one sees nothing else, hears nothing else, understands nothing else, that is the infinite. Where one sees something else, hears something else, understands something else, that is the finite. The infinite is immortal, the finite is mortal. Sir, in what does the infinite rest? In its own greatness, or not even in greatness? In the world they call cows and horses, elephants and gold, slaves, wives, fields, and houses greatness. I do not mean this. Thus he spoke. For in that case, one being the possessor rests in something else. But the infinite cannot rest in something different from itself. 25th Khanda. The infinite indeed is below, above, behind, before, right and left. It is indeed all this. Now follows the explanation of the infinite as the I. I am below, I am above, I am behind, before, right and left. I am all this. Next follows the explanation of the infinite as the Self. Self is below, above, behind, before, right and left. Self is all this. He who sees, perceives, and understands this loves the Self, delights in the Self, revels in the Self, rejoices in the Self. He becomes a Swarag, an autocrat or self-ruler. He is Lord and Master in all the worlds. But those who think differently from this live in perishable worlds and have other beings for their rulers. 26th Kanda. To him who sees, perceives, and understands this, the spirit prana springs from the Self, hope springs from the Self, memory springs from the Self. So do ether, fire, water, appearance and disappearance, food, power, understanding, reflection, consideration, will, mind, speech, names, sacred hymns, and sacrifices. Aye, all this springs from the Self. There is this verse: he who sees this does not see death, nor illness, nor pain. He who sees this sees everything, and obtains everything everywhere. He is one before creation. He becomes three: fire, water, earth. He becomes five. He becomes seven. He becomes nine. Then again he is called the 11th, and 110, and 1020. When the intellectual ailment has been purified, the whole nature becomes purified. When the whole nature has been purified, the memory becomes firm. And when the memory of the highest Self remains firm, then all the ties which bind us to a belief in anything but the Self are loosened. The venerable Sanat Kumara showed to Narada, after his faults had been rubbed out, the other side of darkness. They call Sananta Kumara Skanda. Yeah, Skanda they call him. End of Prapathakas 7. Recording by Jyoti Taravanat.